Welcome, everybody, to the Pack a Day podcast. Neither of us are Andy Herman. I'm Rachel Hopmayer here with Perri Goldstein, and we're taking over on this lovely Friday when you all are watching this. Perri, new Packers stock owner, I hear.
That's me. I am. I own one singular stock of the Green Bay Packers. I am officially an owner. I get to go to the owners' meetings. My dad bought one too, so the Goldstein family owns two stocks.
So, okay, what was the process like? How long was the queue? Talk me through.
Yeah, I entered in, so I'm East Coast time. So I know it started at 8 a.m. Central time, 9 a.m. East Coast time. I entered in at 9:01 and I waited about an hour and 10 minutes in the queue. Yeah, I don't know what the thing is. I think there were some technical difficulties. And then the process was pretty easy, to be honest, after that. You just sign, check off a couple boxes, make sure you're not a robot, put in your credit card information. And then it took about like 24 hours for it to be accepted by the team, which means I think lawyers had to go through and make sure that those buying stocks are real humans. And yeah, it's done. I'm not sure if I get a certificate in the mail or I have to print it, but I'm ready to frame it.
It's exciting, but I mean, AJ Dillon said he only had to wait 25 minutes. So I guess he got in those first 30 seconds, it sounds like.
Yeah, everyone had a varying wait time. I mean, I know people who joined just as early as me who waited 4 hours. So I have no idea. But I just did other things and kept an eye on it. And you had only a 10-minute window to buy the stock once you got in. So you had to pay attention to when the website was going.
That's crazy. Well, now we have a whole new class of Packers stock owners. I'm sure many took advantage of what was the sixth ever offering. We know AJ Dillon did. Kurt Benkert did as well. He says Aaron Jones did. It's kind of cool to see players taking advantage of this option, and they're the only professional team right now that offers that.
It is. It's really, as a fan, I was trying to find the word to describe the way it makes me feel, because you hear, oh, we're bought into the team, we're all in, but the Packers players took it to a literal level of like buying into this team. And so for them to show how much they care, I mean, they care enough. To them, right, $300 is nothing, but it's more the symbol of it to go that extra mile. They already play so hard, Kurt not so much, but they already play so hard on Sundays for us, and then to do that, it's really special. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I'm curious if they bought more than one share. I know the limit is 200 throughout all of the sales that one individual can own, but it's definitely cool to see. In my research for that this week, I learned that the Boston Celtics were once a publicly traded team. I was alive for that era and I didn't know it, but it started in the 80s, ended in 2003, I believe. But yeah, the Celtics were once publicly traded. It's just such an interesting phenomenon in professional sports when we see over in soccer, the UAE getting involved in Premier League football, just ownership as such a global concept.
Yeah, and I think that we've gotten so used to the way sports teams are run, right? Like at least in the NFL, they have ownership meetings and the owners have way more say than I think the average fan even realizes, and like the way the sport is run. And of course, the Packers have Mark Murphy as their president, CEO, and representative at those meetings. But just the entire way the Packers run their organization is so fundamentally different from pretty much every other professional sports team. And I think sometimes when we're evaluating free agency or the draft or just the way operations are run in general, we forget that fact. And I think the ownership structure or the board, if you will, that the Packers have, the executive board, it all trickles down from that. So I think it's really interesting. It's also just an interesting reminder this week about the stock sale. Like this team is not like other teams.
Yep. And in many facets, but let's zoom in on one of those new owners, AJ Dillon, who spoke to the media today. He's gotten a lot of love locally throughout his tenure here. He was the first rookie in his class to move here. I caught up with him at Synergy that month when he first got here and was working out with Scotty. Great facility. A lot of NFL guys around the league have come through there. It's an incredible team there. But ultimately, he bought in stock. He had a lot to say today about how much he loves Door County, got the T to Door County, has had incredible experience with his fiance's family up there. But right now, first and foremost, he's the number one running back for the Green Bay Packers. And he's had such an emphasis on becoming an all-purpose back from his days at Boston College in Chestnut Hill. You know, he wasn't utilized in the passing game there. He already has 14 receptions this year. He even got in a couple towards the end of last year. It's certainly not as much as Jones, but being able to see that Rodgers trusts his hands at those times has to be reassurance when you know he's taking on an even greater role and what the Packers ask their running backs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this transition, while you never want to see a player that's so valued and honestly so beloved as Jones is, you don't want to see that person get hurt, but knowing that he's not going to be able to play, luckily it's very, short-lived. Hopefully it's gonna be 1 to 2 weeks. If anything, he'll come back after the bye. No doubt in my mind. At no point when I heard that was I like, oh, we are in trouble here.
Right.
Like, it was just very obvious, and it's going to be very seamless for AJ Dillon to get involved. And I think part of that goes to Matt LaFleur, right? Like, he is all about running back by committee. And so this isn't some, big debut for AJ Dillon. It's just, okay, I got to step up now and just get more touches. And I think we should fully expect to see Patrick Taylor involved. He even got involved last week when Jones went down. I think it was only 2 carries, but at the same time, LaFleur has this rotation already built in. And that's why all the backs have to be so complete. Like you said, they have to be able to catch passes. They have to be good in pass pro, because you never know when somebody is going to go down. LaFleur always says, you prepare like you're a starter, because at any moment you can be.
Yep, 100%. And he definitely seems ready for that. Again, he looked up to, but was a slice of the pie with Jones and Jamal Williams last year. I think he's definitely prepared for the moment, as prepared as he could be, as the Packers could, support him in that sense. But it is also Patrick Taylor's time to shine and hopefully earn some of that NFL time. Obviously, Kylan Hill is out recovering from that ACL injury. He's working and grinding through the rehab as well. But ultimately, this is going to be an interesting time comparing what the Packers have, especially in their scout team, and how they're preparing Dillon and Taylor, along with what they're facing in terms of the other running backs that they're playing against for this week leading up to the Vikings.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the Vikings, I imagine, are going to ride Dalvin Cook to the sun, right? Like, they saw the way it worked. And I think the Packers defense is very different this season, of course, but the best way to win games is to keep the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands. So continue to ride Dalvin Cook for as long as it works. I hope the Packers counter and kind of give them a little taste of their own medicine with AJ Dillon.
And I think while we're on the topic of defense, it's really funny. I was at the Bucs game last night, and long story short, at the end of a play, I heard a fan yell, "You look like Kevin King out there." And I was very quick to turn around and say, Kevin King had a great game last week. And I think it's important to note that of all the shifting players and schemes we've had in this defense, we still have guys that are coming in and making impact plays right after injury. And one of those is Kevin King. And I do think he could be an instrumental part if he keeps his mental balance through against the Vikings.
Yeah, 100%. Because yes, we talked about Dalvin Cook, but they also have a wide receiver 1-2 duo that is one of the best in the NFL. Like, I'm not afraid to say that. So, you get, of course, you have to cover Justin Jefferson, but Adam Thielen can be just as he's like kind of Kirk Cousins' security blanket at this point. They've been playing together for so long. And so, yeah, we're going to need Stokes and Rasul Douglas and Kevin King to step up. Same with the safeties and cover those wide receivers.
Yeah, I really think those three are going to have to be a key sort of rotation amongst downs. And then, right, you've got Savage and Amos lining up, maybe even throwing Sullivan in some more as well. I think, again, this whole defense by committee is really the way to beat the Vikings. As we know, that was probably going to be their toughest NFC North opponent. Here we are. The time has finally come. And we're going into Minnesota for this one.
Right. This is a tough road game for the Packers. That stadium is not friendly. And now the fans are back, and it's really loud from all counts that I've heard. And the Vikings always play the Packers tough, really tough. And they're a fringe playoff team. Like, they're going to be hungry out there. Every win for them now through the rest of the season matters. And they have 2 against a foe in the NFC in the Packers. So I think we need to expect them to come out with full force, full energy.
Absolutely. So other practice notes from this week: Bakhtiari still hasn't practiced. He was back in the mix, and now it's been quite a time since he's taken the field. Aaron Rodgers also has yet to practice this week. What are your thoughts on his toe injury, Perri?
I'm a little confused where it came from.
Yeah.
But look, Rodgers has played through MCL strains and ligament damage. Like Rodgers is going to play on Sunday. That's not really my concern. My concern more, and I hopefully being in the building is at least an additional step versus being on Zoom like he was last week. But you could tell in the game against the Seahawks that he was a little off with some of his offensive weapons. And so I'm a little bit worried about how no practice again this week is going to affect that. Now, again, it could just be, like I said, he was sitting at home on his couch and maybe rehabbing and working out and being in the facility changes that. But at the same time, he hasn't practiced since November 1st. Yep. That's a long, long time to not have live reps with your guys. So I'm really curious to see what he looks like on Sunday.
For the record, I too have not worked out since November 1st, but the point is that I do think it's kind of a double-edged sword. I would go further to say it wasn't just a little off. Rodgers was very off against the Seahawks, and Packers fans are lucky that Russell Wilson was very quelled by the Packers defense in his return as well. But at the end of the day, a toe injury, I've broken toes in tennis, but I'm obviously not as well conditioned of an athlete as Aaron Rodgers. So at the end of the day, I do think being back in the building, even doing walkthroughs, again, those above the shoulder days present are a lot more impactful than Zoom meetings. Being there is really key to that sort of game development. So I do think this is a bigger step forward than quarantine. However, again, he's not running, he's not taking downs, he's not taking snaps. That is slightly concerning when you realize how inactive Rodgers has been for quite a period of time now compared to what would have been normal.
Yeah. And I think about the season, right? I think it was 2018 season where he had his major knee damage in week 1 against Bears. And there were whole weeks through that season where he was do not practice and then would play on Sunday. And they struggled that season, of course, but he was still Aaron Rodgers. Mm-hmm. So, right. There's also that sort of benefit of the doubt that you give to certain veteran players like Rodgers, where you're like, okay, well, I think if anyone can do this and come out on Sunday, it's you. I think what gets me in this situation more is that there's been a lot of change on this offense because of all these injuries, right? Shifting of offensive line. Now Aaron Jones is out. He's got Josiah DeGuara in now instead of Tunyon. That security and that consistency for him isn't quite there still. Now, again, it's Aaron Rodgers. He's got probably the highest football IQ of anybody out there, but I'm not less worried about him and more about those guys like Josiah DeGuara getting the reps with really. Rodgers, right? Yeah. To get the practice in with him versus how he's going to handle the situation on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, it's about the offense operating cohesively as a unit. That's the only way you stay an offensive team as Rodgers wants it to be. He says the Packers are not a defensive team. I beg to differ personally. I think the past few weeks have very securely and dominantly shown that the Packers are a defensive team and they get, as we say in baseball, run support or touchdown support from Aaron Rodgers. What would you say?
So I don't believe in defensive first teams. Okay. I think that the goal of this sport is to score more points than your opponent. And so when you have a good defense that helps you do that and stops the other team from scoring points and gets the ball back to your quarterback, you're going to win more games. But at the end of the day, you're here to score touchdowns. And so if you're not scoring touchdowns, like that win against Seattle, great. Love a good defensive grind. That game's not going to win you games in the playoffs. You're going to go up against better offenses than the Seahawks are right now. And you're going to have to work on offense. So while I do understand the sentiment right now that the Packers are being led by their defense, I don't want that to be like their mentality going forward. I want them to continue to be, like Rodgers said, no, we are an offensive minded team. We have an offensive minded coach. We have one of the best quarterbacks to ever do it. He should be able to score more touchdowns than he is.
Absolutely. He definitely should be able to. You know what they say, defense wins championships. And after some flurries today in Green Bay, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking LA sounds pretty good right now. And at the end of the day, the defense is the most cohesively operating unit right now. I don't think we can argue that. At the end of the day, the communication, the stability, the synchronicity on the defense is much better right now than the offense is.
Love that word.
Spelling bee.
Synchronicity. No, I mean, the unit of all three phases, the defense is playing the best by far right now. And they're keeping this team in games. And that's more than you could ask for, I think, from a Packers defense. The last decade you've watched, it has not been this way. So I am fully on board for how well this defense is playing. And if they continue to ride this through the rest of the season and through January, they can go far. I just want that, best offense by DVOA in 2020. Like I want that energy back for the rest of the season. And I think, there's a couple of road games, but for the most part, everyone's coming up to Lambeau. You said it yourself. It's cold. It's already snowing. Like this is their time. This is
it's Quadzilla time. This is the time for AJ to take over.
Yeah, this is their season. This is their weather. I
so
feel like football just started.
Oh, sure, fine, whatever. Week 10 is the start of NFL season, as the greats say. I do think Bach not practicing is worth revisiting. A lot of people got excited when he was finally activated, but again, that doesn't mean he'd play. Rodgers did say on McAfee a few appearances ago, near, 3 times near for the giraffe to return. I don't think Bakhtiari is particularly tall and skinny, short compared to me, but I don't know where the giraffe reference comes from. But right now, this doesn't really feel like the near future.
No, I'm trying not to be too concerned about it because I trust the Packers training staff and they are traditionally quite conservative. And when you have a player as important as David Bakhtiari is, you do not want to mess with that process.
Absolutely.
He had a really gruesome injury and it was New Year's Eve, right? It's been less than a year, and an ACL tear to come back from that in less than a year, that's tough. So I just want to trust that they're going through the process and doing what they need to do. Is it disappointing that he can't be out there? Of course, he's the best left tackle in football. But I'd rather have him down the stretch than to push it and go out there and make it worse.
And now you're playing this tricky balance on the O-line because when he comes back, there's going to be some shifting of positions. And right now you're just using this rotation of what you have. How much longer can you balance this until someone else gets accidentally hurt? And then that puts off what the shift to return would have been. So at the end of the day, there are so many moving parts, whether Bakhtiari is back or not. All of the offensive line, I think, is still just a fragile balancing act right now.
Oh, it always seems to be. I mean, I think offensive linemen get hurt more than any other position group. It's a really, really physical battle. And, you're out there not just protecting any quarterback, you're protecting a quarterback that can sometimes hold the ball for like 12 seconds, right? And so it's a tough job. And I agree with you. I would rather them focus on that balance between all 5 of them and not have everything geared around one player, even if he is as important as 69 is.
I think something I've been thinking about, now that we're roughly halfway through, I guess who would you crown on the Packers that you think is the most improved from last year or even from camp?
Most improved?
I like a superlative.
So it couldn't be a rookie then?
Let's start with returners.
Oh, wow. You're really catching me off guard here.
Trying to get you.
I mean, there's a couple of players that come to mind. I think if you take expectations out of it, Rashawn Gary, I mean, he's gone from pretty much just a rotational pass rusher to having one of the highest quarterback pressure rates in the league. Again, when you look at draft stock, you're like, okay, yeah, well, we expect that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't always happen, right? Like first round picks don't always pan out. I think that if you're looking, I mean, my choice for, I guess that's my choice for most improved. Biggest surprise, which I'll add in another superlative, is definitely Eric Stokes. I mean, I was up at camp and he wasn't really running with the ones, it was Ja and King, and you went into the season thinking maybe this guy will play at some point, and all of a sudden he's your starting boundary corner and he's going up against pretty much all of the opposing wide receiver ones. Like he's running with DeAndre Hopkins and he's a rookie and he's done incredibly well. I mean, there aren't enough superlatives out there to describe the way Eric Stokes has played. So I guess that's my biggest surprise.
Yeah, Stokes definitely deserves that gold star for sure. You know, we haven't seen others like Shamar John Charles, even Royce Newman lately stack up like that. I wish we had more Josh Myers play to talk about, but unfortunately, I don't even want to say he's following expectations because he was served some pretty lofty expectations coming in, but I definitely think he has done well with the situation presented until he's been out, of course. You know, if you took Rashawn, I think Dean Lowry has done well. I think he's grown a lot in the past year. I also think my most improved beyond expectations has to be Chris Barnes. I mean, the way, you know, that's where I am, because at the end of the day, the tandem he's become with Devondre Campbell, I mean, he has stepped up to the situation that was handed to him. The tackles he's getting, the way he's flying, I can't stress it enough. I didn't know losing 10 pounds could be so impactful. But at the end of the day, I think the dude's become a total menace and exceeded a lot of people's expectations for him this year.
I think so too. I mean, again, when you're talking about my take on this, I'm going to preface what I'm about to say with my take on this is once you enter the building where you're drafted, if you're drafted, everything resets, I think. Like, right, like you just have to go in and do your job. Sure. But I do think at some point you have to take a step back and look at someone like Chris Barnes and think about the hurdles that he's had to overcome in order to even just be a starter, right? More than anybody else. So what he's accomplished on top of all of that is incredible.
And then you had Jalen Smith come in front of him for 27 snaps. And then they realized, you know what? Chris is better at the end of the day. And it's okay that that experiment didn't work out, but he kept his head down in that adversity and that didn't affect his play. I don't think a lot of people understand the mental fortitude it takes to not let business moves like that affect your play.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think there's so much toughness that as a person who sits on my couch and watches this game, like does not understand and cannot be overstated.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you know, it's been nice seeing DeGuara in the passing game now, obviously because of the tight end situation. I'm hoping these added snaps by the end of the year, we're saying we've seen a lot of growth out of him because obviously we got nothing last year. So I do think this is an opportunity that maybe if we're looking ahead, who do you think needs to take advantage of these next few weeks?
Amari Rodgers is definitely top of my list. I think he has such a clear role to play in this offense, and it's obviously taking a little bit more time for him to get acclimated or for Matt LaFleur to also, because this is a balance between coach and player as well, to understand the way he can be used. But I think with Jones out, you know, he could be a really interesting piece, you know, pre-snap motion, it's free. And you got a guy who is doing it a lot and hasn't really gotten the ball out of it yet. So maybe that's something, right? Between him and Randall Cobb, they do some really, really unique things with their skill sets. So
like we always imagined.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I definitely think you're absolutely right there. I used to think that maybe I would say John Runyon now, but I do think he's proven that he has space in the NFL with his caliber of play, whether the future is with the Packers or not. I also think if Devondre Campbell wants more than a one-year deal or an extension, you know, not that his play hasn't absolutely shown that he deserves that, but I mean, you come out the year like that, you'll have a lot of phone calls by the end of the season for sure.
I hope it's not a phone call and just a knock on the locker room door saying, "Hey, buddy, we're keeping you.
Here's your check.
Yeah, here's your money. Listen, don't go anywhere."
That's the best $2 million spent in the National Football League this year by far.
Yeah, I don't even think there's an argument against that. Yeah, no.
That was taking candy in a store.
Oh, this was fun.
This is fun. We love taking over for Andy. I hope this was some insightful discussion for you all. You know, as you know, I love to reply to you guys in the comments. I think it can be a fun time when we make it that. So stay tuned. Perri, where can we find you on the interwebs?
On the interwebs. Yeah, just follow me on Twitter at Perri_Goldstein. I podcast weekly with Maggie Loney on the Pack's What She Said podcast. So you can listen to us there. And where can everyone find your work?
Even in the Green Bay area or not, you can always find my Packers coverage at NBC 26. We are the official Packers station of Green Bay. You can find me on Twitter at Rachel Hopmayer. I'm always tweeting about something, usually the Packers. But for us, for Rachel and Perri, for Andy somewhere else, this was Pack-A-Day.
Go Pack Go.